Welcome to this module on the basics of the Philippine energy sector. This module is all about providing you the energy sector landscape to make you understand the different problems that this sector is facing, and hopefully, your ideas and businesses can solve these problems. This module is divided into 4 videos. We'll have an overview of the energy sector in this video. The succeeding videos will discuss the electricity sector, the challenges faced by the energy and electricity sector, and the energy-related Philippine policies in place. And in the last video, we will discuss an overview of climate change. We'll dig in first into the overview of the energy sector in this video, so let us begin. Let's start with a few basic concepts. Let's define energy and power. These two physical quantities are the quantities that we will always encounter in the energy sector. Energy is defined as a property that must be transferred to an object in order to either perform work or to heat the object. So for example, for our appliances to work, we need to put energy in the form of electrical energy or electricity. Another example, if we want to cook our food, we need to put in heat energy, and this heat energy comes from either biomass sources like firewood or charcoal, or petroleum-derived products like LPG. And also in some cases, electricity is used for cooking. Common energy units are the following: joule, calorie, the British thermal unit or BTU, million of tons of oil equivalent or MTOE, and we also have kilowatt hours and megawatt hours. These last two is always used to describe the amount of electrical energy or electricity. Let us also define power. Power is the amount of energy transferred per unit time. Our appliances and devices have power ratings. So for example, a 700 watt air conditioning transfers more energy per unit time than let's say 70 watt electric fan. And the common power units are the following: watts, kilowatts, megawatts, and horsepower. Note that power plants, and these are the industries that produce electricity, are also rated in terms of power, usually megawatts. A power plant with a higher megawatt rating means it can produce more electricity. Now, for an overview of the energy sector, we have supply, where energy comes from, and demand, where it goes, and the transformation in between them. Let's start with supply. In a national context, for example, in our country, what does energy supply means? Well, supply comes from either local or indigenous or imported. So local or imported. In energy, we have a concept called energy self-sufficiency. This is defined as the ability of a country to fulfill its own energy needs without relying on imported energy. This energy self-sufficiency is very important to the Philippines and to our Department of Energy. The latest data on our energy self-sufficiency is 55%. What does that mean? So that means 55% of our total energy supply is 55% local and 45% imported. How about demand? Energy demand answers the question, who uses the final form of energy? Well, the primary energy using sectors are commercial, industrial sector, transportation, residential, and agriculture. Demand can also answer the question, in what form is energy sold? And the most typical forms of energy when it is sold are electricity, petroleum products for our vehicles, biomass for cooking, etc. And then we have transformation in between supply and demand, and this is how energy is processed from its supply, which is the primary form, to demand, which is the useful form. Alright, so the following are the possible sources or supply of energy. First is local supply or domestic extraction. Second is renewable sources. Then we also have energy imports, where energy is supplied from other countries, and energy exports, where local supply is delivered to other countries. In the previous slide, I mentioned energy self-sufficiency, and I mentioned the 55% energy self-sufficiency as of the moment. This 55% actually comes from domestic extraction and renewable sources, and the rest, the 45%, comes from imported. So the government intends to increase this further, and one of the ways to increase that 55% is to develop renewable energy sources. Energy demand can be expressed or displayed in terms of the sectors of economy that uses the energy. So we have agriculture, commercial, industrial sector, residential, and transportation. As mentioned earlier, it can also be shown in terms of the final form it is sold, like electricity, gas, coal, or petroleum. In between supply and demand is transformation of energy. So first, we have the power sector. In the power sector, electricity is produced using either coal, oil, natural gas, or renewable sources like biomass, hydro, geothermal, solar, wind, etc. In other examples of transformation are oil refineries, where crude oil is processed and refined into more usable forms like gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. Lastly, we have biofuel production, where biomass is used as a feedstock to convert it to either biogas, liquid, or solid fuels. Okay, now let's look at some energy statistics, both in the world and also in the Philippines. This shows the current world supply and demand of energy. This data is from the International Energy Agency, or IEA, and this data is 2017. So for 2017, the world energy supply is about 14,000 million tons of oil equivalent, or MTOE. This is dominated by non-renewable sources, as you can see, 32% oil, 27% coal, and 22% natural gas. On the demand side, the world total energy demand in 2017 is about 9,700 MTOE, and majority of this is in the form of petroleum products at 41% and electricity production at about 19%. How about in the Philippines? Well, in the Philippines, the latest available data is 2016, and the source is the Philippine Department of Energy. The energy supply in the country in 2016 is about 53.2 MTOE. 55% of this is indigenous, as I mentioned earlier. The remaining 45 is, of course, coal and oil, imported coal and oil. Under indigenous sources, the large contributors are geothermal, coal, and biomass. On the demand side, total energy consumption in 2016 is 33.1 MTOE. Majority of this is in the form of petroleum products at 49%, biomass at 22%, and electricity production at about 19%. Now, let's take a look at how the world energy changed over time. But before we do that, take note that there are two main drivers of energy use. One is population, the other is energy per capita consumption. Population is obvious, right? Because if there are more people, the higher the total energy demand. So actually, if you look at the country with the highest energy consumption, that would be China, because they also have the highest population. On the other hand, per capita energy consumption means total energy consumed by each person. And this is driven by economic growth. For example, higher income nations or individuals will have generally higher energy consumption per capita than lower income counterparts. So with these two in mind, let us focus on the world energy per capita in the last 1,000 years. Notice that it is relatively flat until around 1850s. After that, there is a rapid increase in per capita consumption. And there are several theories as to why there was a rapid increase in energy per capita consumption during this time. And one of the major theories that access to fossil fuels during this time became easier and it drove the consumption up. So here's the thing. It is not only per capita energy consumption that grew rapidly starting 1850s. Population also grew very rapidly around this time. So, if both of your drivers of energy use are rapidly increasing, what can we expect in our total energy supply? Well, as expected, after 1850s, the total energy supply rapidly increased. And this is still increasing until now with our constant growing population and economic growth. This is the same chart as the previous one, but zooming on 100 years or so. It shows that all our supply of sources, energy sources, is increasing. Fossil fuels, nuclear, renewables. The exemption is biomass, which is relatively flat, but also increasing in the last few years. To summarize, energy is needed by our machines, appliances, and gadgets in order for them to work. Our need for energy is rapidly increasing with economic and population growth. Non-renewable energy sources of energy like coal, oil, and natural gas still dominate our energy supply both worldwide and in the Philippines. In the next video, we will focus on one of the forms of energy, electricity.